because I know Andrea, because Andrea and someone from the American Manufacturing Association came down to talk to us. It was really the American Manufacturing person that was helping us focus on job and adding jobs, and the conversation around, I think at the time they had a couple 100,000 jobs available. And some of the president, I'm going to say ministry work that I do, entrepreneurship program stuff, we can put those folks into jobs that, are behind the scenes, and, we can get them work instead of having them be part of our problem with the homeless situation. So Andrea was a bonus there. And since then, I've really just, been on Andrea and Mustafa's coattails, listening and figuring out, what we need to do. I sit here, look out the window at the worst intersection in the state, if not the worst intersection in the country, Bel Air, 610 and 59. I hear the ambulances go. My Bel Air Fire Department is responsible for on average, 8 accidents per day, which actually reminds me that they seem to have gone down since we've opened up new sections of the freeway here. So we're getting some things done. But that we started the conversation now probably 30 years ago, and because people weren't getting the right information, they weren't voting the right way, and yada yada. So that's when I realized how important it was to make sure that we're getting the right information from the right people and getting the right people to work on it. So
that's right. Well, good morning, everyone else. Good morning, Commissioner and Ed Ryland.
Morning.
We have Rob Goddard on. Good morning, everyone. More people coming in. So right now, this is the open networking portion of everything. Super excited to have everyone here on our Zoom meeting today for our Governmental Affairs Committee. Take this time, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then don't forget to put your contact information in the chat section as well. So let's start first in our tile here. I have Jerry Cooper. Jerry, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Thank you. I'm Jerry Cooper, and I own and run a conflict solutions company that operates primarily inside other companies. We're called in when a company existing policies and processes fail to resolve conflict, whether it's an interpersonal type of contract between a supervisor and employee or a structural conflict, organizational conflict issue. So in a nutshell, that's what we do, conflict resolution inside companies.
Awesome, thank you so much, Jerry. And then I'll go next. My name is Devin Wagner. I'm the event manager here at the Houston West Chamber of Commerce. We're having our chamber celebration tonight, everyone. So if you're not registered, you can go ahead and come tonight. We'd love for everyone to be there and to celebrate with all of our members and our volunteers. I put the link in the chat section right now to register. It's gonna be a ton of, oh look, Tim's already ready. Look at him. All right, Tim, you're next. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Sullivan. I'm with Action Coach Business Coaching. We help small to medium businesses with their growth, whether it's with their team or whether it's one-on-one accountability for the business owner. We want to make sure that we are creating the economy that we want to see. Tim Sullivan, Action Coach Business Coaching.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. And then next we have Jim Fredericks. He's going to be our moderator today. But Jim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Jim Fredericks. I'm with RE/MAX The Woodlands in Spring. I spend much of my time with real estate, working with RE/MAX. We work all throughout the area, actually. I've actually closed on a house with some clients in Fort Bend County just a couple of months ago. So, I've had a long career in newspapers and then a stint in government. And so as a result of those roles, I also provide communications, consulting and government affairs services. So through Fredericks Group, and that is my association with the Highway 36A Coalition. And prior to working with Coalition. I also served with the Transportation Advocacy Group, Houston.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being able to join us today. Next, I have Commissioner Andy Myers. He's going to be our main guest speaker for today. Commissioner Myers, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Okay. I'm a county commissioner in Fort Bend County, got elected in 96, took office January 97, been reelected obviously every 4 years since then. My main focus when I came into office was reducing the tax rate. At that time, Fort Bend County had the highest tax rate in the region at 66 cents. Today, we have the lowest at 44 cents. So I consider that progress. At the same time, Fort Bend County has been either the first or second fastest growing county in the state percentage wise. We add a city of Rosenberg to our community, most of them in our county, most of them in precinct 3 every year. So we continue to experience rapid growth even during the COVID years. Last year, we had 50% increase in growth in new home starts and sales in my precinct. So it continues to rocket along. Currently serve on HGAC's board. I'm the past chairman of HGAC. I also, during my term there, created the HGAC Legislative Committee, and I created the long name they shortened, but I created the Flood Mitigation Water Resource Committee that was reduced to Water Resource Committee. So that's something we've been focused on in this area since we created the committee and trying to do two things. Obviously providing water for our cities, and there's always a need for water, potable water, as well as address the issues of flood mitigation on a regional basis. I'm also on the board of the Conference of Urban Counties. It's a conference of the 37 largest counties in the state that about 80+% of the residents live in. I'm the vice chair and just involved in my community, still focused on trying to keep our taxes in check. I always try to make certain we don't let that get away from us. You'll be surprised how quickly taxes can go up, and they go up automatically with the increases in values, even though we keep reducing the tax rate. Some of my residents in particular continue to pay higher taxes each year. So something we continue to be focused on.
Thank you so much for being able to join us today. And I can definitely attribute to the rapidly growing Fort Bend County. Myself and then my coworker, Karina, we live out there in Richmond and Rosenberg, and all the subdivisions, all the roadways out there, it's just growing rapidly, guys. Okay, next we have Carrie Warner, our president.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Glad to see you all here today. And as Devin said, we're really looking forward not only to our wonderful webinar today, but our wonderful chamber celebration, which we haven't had in 2 years. So it's like planning a wedding over here. It's fantastic. So we're really excited.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, next I have Dennis Silva.
Come off guard. Good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone. Dennis with TDECU. Thank you, Commissioner Myers. It's good to see you again. So TDC, we're the largest credit union in Houston market. And what I do is I build strategic partnerships with brokers, organizations, and companies.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. And then next I have Ed Ryland. Oh, hold on, Ed, you're muted.
All right, how about that?
There you go. There you go.
All right, so good morning and happy Thankful Thursday to everybody. My name is Ed Ryland. I am president and CEO of Arvo Realty Advisors. We are expert commercial real estate advisors, and organizations and individuals like you on this Zoom call this morning come to us when you have a commercial real estate need, a acquisition or a desire or a problem in commercial real estate, and we'll assist you with any of your commercial real estate needs. But my most important job, as I tell folks this year, is that I am the current chairman of the West Houston Chamber of Commerce. And so this Government Affairs Committee is such a critical part of what we do for our members in our community. So I thank Commissioner Myers for being here, and I thank you guys for joining us this morning as well.
Thank you, Ed. And Ed, I just got to say, I know you're going to be there tonight. You better be looking sharp. I know you have some sharp suits in that closet of yours. So I'm
Ed
excited.
always looks sharp, Debbie.
I know.
He's gonna put on his extra A+. gear.
Monica's saying to bring the razzle dazzle though.
That's right.
Yep.
1940s, bring it on.
1920s, Carrie.
20, sorry. I don't know why I said 40, because I'm in the 40s, so I just always go back to 20. I don't know why.
Okay, next I have Susan Thompson.
Good morning. How
Morning,
is everyone
Susan.
today? Hi. I represent Houston Community College and with the engineering program as well as STEM initiatives. And as you can see my background, we have great engineering programs with partnerships with University of Texas at Tyler here at our Houston Engineering Center, as well as Texas A&M through an engineering academy. And then University of Houston, we have a Katie Academy as well as a newly announced East Side Frog Academy, East Side of Houston. So lots of great things happening, and we would love to partner with any institution that would like great interns. Our associates program builds in 18 hours of engineering to allow the students to step into the junior level. So we're pleased and glad to be here, and I look forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. And I've seen Kathy Anzavino's all her posts on Facebook on the new development in the East End. Is there a virtual
very
reality center that's going to be there? Is that right? Is that what I saw?
Great question. I'm not sure.
I saw something about that. I'm not sure if it was the same thing, but I was like, wow, that looks so neat. Anyway, next I have Rob Goddard. Morning, Rob. You don't have to introduce yourself if you don't want to.
Good morning. Just needed to tap the mute. I'm with the Austin County, the Sealy Planning Board in Austin County, and have been interested in what's going on with the 36A project. When I got the email, I thought I'd listen in and see what's cooking on that particular item and how it might affect Austin County and Sealy.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rob. And then next I have Debbie Phelan. She is with Commissioner Myers on the 36A Coalition, and she's babysitting right now, so I'm not sure if she'll be on, but you're more than welcome to speak up if you would like to, Debbie, or put your contact information in the chat section. And then let's see, it's 11:40 right now. We'll give it a few more minutes, see if anyone else jumps on the call, and then we'll begin with our welcome and introductions of our speaker today and kind of lead into our program. But right now, it's Memorial Day weekend. Anyone have any plans?
Six Flags, RV to Six Flags.
There you go. That sounds like fun. Anyone else? Barbecues with the family in the backyard, something like that.
Neighborhood barbecue.
There you go. Yeah.
First time ever in about a year.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
Very exciting.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay.
Susan, do you know if your programs are in partnership with or have any involvement with the TWC program I just recently saw where they are providing interns? They actually pay the wages for the first 6 or 8
Yes.
weeks.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Well, it's students that have to qualify for that program, if that's what I'm thinking of. They qualify
Yeah.
as work study, and then the institution pays 3/4 of their salary. And then the company that hires them, and that's system wide in a number of disciplines, not just engineering. So yes. And I can put that link in the chat as well.
Yeah, that would be great. It goes right there with our, one of our pillars of, both the education and workforce development, because we're always trying to upskill, and, we're always trying to remember that, things like what Andy's going to talk to us about in a minute, that transportation side, which we sometimes forget, that infrastructure, we have to make sure that that's done. We can't be having people, even though we're all used to Zoom, we're tired of Zoom. We need that in person. So we need to make sure we have the infrastructure for both stuff coming in from the port and all the way up. So yeah, it's great.
All right, guys, well, I think we'll go ahead and start today's program. Tim, would you like to lead us in our welcome for today?
So welcome. I'm so happy to have everyone here today for our final virtual luncheon. That is our final virtual luncheon. We're going back to in-person. It's planned to have all the legislators together at CUNY Devin Trulux. And so that'll be the fourth Thursday. We have a couple of legislators that have confirmed for that. Of course, it is subject to change based on the potential for a extended session. So today we have with us our special guest speaker, the Honorable Andy Myers, Fortman County Precinct 3 Commissioner. Commissioner Myers is going to tell us about the 36A Coalition and what West Houston can expect and look forward to the further development of 36A in the coming years. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Paul Locke with CenterPoint Energy. Paul was not able to join us today, but Paul is instrumental in not only helping us present this program, but also all the kinder programs they do around town. Really helps us to get the information that we need around town. So thank you to Paul Locke and CenterPoint Energy. Next, I'd like to lay out our housekeeping rules. For the duration of the program, all guests will be muted. Devin Wagner will be monitoring that. Please save all your questions till the 12:45 time frame, unless Jim and Commissioner Myers would like to open up earlier. We will focus on having that 12:45 Q&A. If at any point during the program you're having technical difficulties, Devin is the one to reach out to. To better view the panelists and moderators who are speaking, we encourage all guests to put their screen in speaker view and not grid view. You can change it to speaker view by toggling over the squares in the upper right-hand corner. If you're on your cell phone, you can adjust the screen by simply swiping the screen to the left. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jim Fredericks. Actually, Jim already introduced himself. He's been a government affairs and PR person for a couple of judges and done some work up mainly in the Montgomery County area, but he's also been instrumental with TAG. And then Commissioner Myers, as we already heard, also, he's really the kingpin, if you will, around this whole project and making sure that it gets kicked off. You all probably do have his bio from the email, so I'm not going to go over things we've already talked about, but let me kick it over to Jim and Andy. So take it away, Jim.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say Commissioner Myers is probably the best spokesperson for the Highway 36A that I've ever seen. And by virtue of his long service to Fort Bend and his involvement with mobility projects, he probably understands the ins and outs of these kinds of infrastructure more than many other people. And every time I've heard him speak and address this topic, he's really demonstrated a breadth of knowledge and understanding of the impacts of these kind of projects, what they can mean for communities in terms of economic development, and certainly specifically for 36A. So we're really looking forward for giving you all an opportunity to hear from Commissioner Myers, and who really understands it from the ground up. Commissioner, I thought also, just as an aside, Commissioner, your protege, Robert Pachukas, did an excellent job advocating on behalf of the 36A with the Bryan College Station Chamber Transportation Committee yesterday.
I trained him well.
Yes, you did. He's taken a lot of notes from you and did a good job. So you've got an excellent person on staff there, and we really appreciate your ability to identify and hire and keep and retain talented people. So let's go ahead and dive into this. I thought the best way to start this is maybe just let you go ahead and jump in, Commissioner,
okay,
and talk a little bit about the mission of 36A, what we're really trying to accomplish. And then I'll go ahead and follow up with that with some specific questions that hopefully will tease out some more details and help deepen everyone's understanding of the project and its impact and where we're headed.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'll start from the beginning. This started after redistricting took place in the Fulshire Simonton area was taken from Precinct 4 and put in Precinct 3. That was effective 2002, almost 20 years ago now. And I started taking a look, obviously, at my new precinct, how I was structured. And at that time, we were in the process of building the West Park Toll Road, recognizing once that was completed, developers were already purchasing land, and leapfrogging one another going west. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that in the not too distant future, we're going to have a major population out there, and I had no north-south thoroughfare. The only one I had was a dinky little 1489 two-lane that followed the river and the creek, so it a lot of twists and turns in it. I was on HGAC's board at that time and looked at that to see, can I get some kind of engineering study to identify a north-south thoroughfare on the west part of Fortman County, and they said, well, no, you're too early. So we continued that for a period of time. And one day I was invited to the Port of Freeport. I'd not gone down there. I knew it existed. And so I go down there and find out that they had some major plans for expanding that port to deepen it to, they'd already been in the process of getting congressional authorization to deepen the port to become a deep water port, and practically only deep water port on the entire Gulf Coast of Mexico. And so I said, well, that's interesting. Let's see how that's going to impact the surrounding area, and looked at the only two roads that came out of Freeport was 288, takes you downtown Houston. Figured that's probably not the ideal place to take cargo. And the other one was a 2-lane road called 36. And that went through a bunch of little towns, and there was only 2 lanes. So I said, well, at that time, TxDOT had already identified 36 as one of their future projects to widen, and they're in the process of doing that now to 4 lanes from Freeport to 59 there in Rosenberg. So looking at just kind of taking a look at that road and said, well, if you just continue this thing directly north, it would take you through the western portion of my precinct. And, so that's how I came up with the concept of 36A. I said, well, instead of widening 36A where it goes through at that point, if we took it and directed it more or less directly north, we could take it through Fort Bend, through Waller County to 290 to Highway 6. Highway 6 gets you to 35, 35 gets you all the way to the, all the way to the central part of Texas. I mean, central part of the United States for that matter. And once you get to 35, it takes you all the way to the distribution centers in both Dallas and Fort Worth. Found out Dallas-Fort Worth is the largest inland distribution center in the United States. It's the 3rd largest distribution center after the ports of Los Angeles and New York, New Jersey. So it's a major operation for the state of Texas. And I then went back to TxDOT and said, well, look, if, and HGAC, and I said, look, here's a potential infrastructure to support the future development of the Port of Freeport. The Port of Freeport becomes the deep water port it intends to become. It's going to have 2 things, a rail line and a major road that moves cargo to and from the port. And here's an ideal project to make that happen. 36 that you're already going to improve and direct it through Fort Bend, Waller County, connecting it to 290. There's nothing in the way. There's no, it's virgin territory. It still is to a large extent. So there's no great urban renewal trying to widen the road through some communities in Texas. So it looked like an ideal opportunity, and we began the process of trying to find the money. And in the process, found out that we already knew how difficult it was to get TxDOT's attention. So with the help of Richard Fields, with the Gary Fields, who just began his firm, he and I actually ended up creating the 36A Coalition with the purpose of trying to build support for this project from the various local governments as well as local businesses and community interest, community activists, et cetera, saying here's a project that is going to benefit Texas, benefit the whole Gulf Coast of Texas, most of the Gulf Coast of Texas, certainly will benefit Missouri County, Fort Bend County, Austin, Waller, and all the counties north all the way to the Texas-Oklahoma border and further north. So that effort has been going on for some time now, and we continue to have meetings like this in which we make presentations of our idea of how 36A is going to benefit not just this region, but the entire state of Texas, and frankly, the entire country. I had about $50,000 in one particular project that I took, and I ended up hiring a consultant to do a very preliminary study. From that, we rehired them to do a much more in-depth study to provide some information with regard to the impact that a major port, or whether or not a major port on the Gulf Coast of Mexico would be economically viable. Their report came back and said, you know, based on our calculation, you can move a tremendous amount of the international trade that's coming in the West Coast to the Texas Gulf Coast. What was happening is that the significant amount of the Asian trade that comes into the West Coast is put on a rail line, railed all the way across the country to Dallas-Fort Worth and to the distribution centers in Dallas-Fort Worth, where it's distributed from there to other parts of the United States, particularly the Midwestern parts of the United States. So when we looked at the economics of it, although it's a much longer distance going through the Panama Canal into the Gulf Coast, Gulf of Mexico to the port, shipping on the water is a lot less expensive than it is on a rail line. And so the numbers flipped. If you actually put the cargo from China or India on a ship and ship it across the Pacific, if you take it to the Gulf Coast instead of the West Coast, and from the Gulf Coast up to the Dallas-Fort Worth distribution centers, it's actually ends up being cheaper to do it that way than it would be the way they're doing it currently. So that to us offered all kind of opportunities for the state of Texas and for this region for all kind of economic development, not the least of which distribution centers, but also for manufacturing operations, particularly bringing in semi-finished goods to finish them in the United States so that they, quote, are manufactured in the United States and vice versa. Having manufactured goods in the United States shipped to other countries and utilizing a major deep water port. The problem we have is there's no port on the entire Gulf Coast of Mexico that can accommodate the largest container ships. They draw too much water. The Port of Houston will never be there because of the Houston Ship Channel, which is some 70 miles long. And you also have oil and gas pipelines that underneath it, you have the tunnel, et cetera, that prevents you from going to the 51 to 55 foot depth you have to have to accommodate the large, what I call them Panamax ships that carry 15,000 TEUs instead of the 4,000 to 7,000 TEUs that you can ship today. So once you have a port that can accommodate the largest container ships, you now have an advantage. The ports on the West Coast are natural deep water ports, so they're natural ports for the larger Panamax ships. The additional advantage that you have bringing the cargo to the Gulf Coast ports, excuse me, for the big shipping lines, is that on the West Coast, about 60% of the containers go back empty. There's no backhaul, if you would, or there's only a partial backhaul, or the ships and the containers that are, after they bring the goods to the West Coast, there's nothing to ship back. Most of the most of the things that are grown are made in the West Coast or consumed, by the rest of the United States. So there's not much of a export market. It's not as big an export market as you have on the Gulf Coast. And on the Gulf Coast, you have a significant amount of opportunities for a backhaul for all of these container ships that are coming and would be calling on it. So that's an additional economic advantage that was not factored into the calculation that would be available, since you have a lot of agricultural products that come down the Mississippi River, travel on the intercoastal waterway to your various ports. There's a lot of export of our agricultural products. You have a lot of export of our petrochemical products that directly that are manufactured here on the Gulf Coast that makes the Port of Houston one of the largest ports in the United States. So there's all kind of opportunities that are available once you have a deep water port. And the port of Freeport is in the process of becoming that deep water port. And what it needs is it needs infrastructure. It needs a road and it needs a rail line. And those are the two things that we've been working on primarily through the 36A coalition, promoting both of those, but primarily the 36A road, because that's going to be critical. We were successful in getting funding from TxDOT to do a study. That study is being done by David Garnett's engineering firm. It's kind of on pause at the moment. During COVID, TxDOT revenue kind of took a little bit of a hit. The severance taxes that are generated went down, which funds a portion of a portion of TxDOT's budget, as well as some of the gas taxes. So that's a little bit of a pause at the moment, although we anticipate that's going to come back. So that's a $14 million project. It's now kind of divided into two phases. The first phase takes it from what we call Spur 10, which is essentially comes off of 36A and takes it directly north through Fort Bend County to I-10. And then that's phase one. And phase two takes it from I-10 to 290 in Waller County, with the idea that you can take 290 to 6, and 6 takes you to 35. 35 takes you, about anywhere you want to go. So once you get to 290, so you'll have 36 that connects to 59, then connects to 10, then connects to 290, then connects to Highway 6. So it's a major north-south thoroughfare bringing cargo and goods as well as people from the coast of Texas all the way to the central part of the United States, for that matter. So it's a very big project. We have, I know Senator Ted Cruz's office has looked at that, sees the benefit. They basically tell us, well, keep us up to date, because we're not quite to the point where we're ready to have the Fed step in with a lot of money. We have to finish the studies first. So we've got the attention of enough people that are focused on this. So we're just kind of riding the tiger, so to speak. So that's kind of the story.
Okay, excellent. So, you have a front row seat there to a lot of the growth, tremendous growth that's taken place in Fort Bend County. You see it coming. And so how does that increase the urgency to get this corridor identified with a potential alignment?
Well, one of the things that we are doing, we don't advertise it too much. We are actually building a road from the river to the county line, actually to 10. We're calling it the Twinwood Ranch Road, for want of a better term, mainly because there's a entity out here called Twinwood that owns about 13,000 acres in Fort Bend. It's mainly oriented north-south, and it goes essentially from the river to I-10, which is in Waller County. So a portion of their property is in Waller County. They have long-term plans of obviously major development, a significant amount of it being industrial and commercial. They have a preferred route, obviously. We have a preferred route. We don't know if it's TxDOT's preferred route, but we are building a road. In fact, we have already built a portion of it that we anticipate will be the route that 36A takes through Fort Bend. In addition, I think in December of 19, TxDOT finished a countywide study for Waller County that had as a north-south thoroughfare, and Waller County is kind of a north-south oriented county to begin with. It's certainly more north-south than it is east-west, and they need a north-south thoroughfare. They got 290, and they got 10 at the bottom. 290 goes kind of through the middle of it, but they don't have a north-south thoroughfare, and so the TxDOT study showed that the route that we had identified for 36A is a route that they have identified as a north-south thoroughfare for Waller County. So all these things are kind of coming together. We just need to keep it moving forward. And so we continue to, go back to TxDOT. They have a tendency, this is a long-term project, obviously. So they have a tendency to, whenever when their revenue drops a little bit, they have a tendency to kind of focus more on the more immediate needs than they have on the longer term needs. So this is one of the projects. It's not been eliminated, but it's kind of been slowed down a little bit. So we kind of anticipate that would happen, but we want to keep the pressure on. And that's the reason the 36A coalition is important, because it, as a group that's advocating for this project. And as long as the TxDOT hears that the local community is this is a project that they would like to see happen, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we're going to be the squeaky wheel.
Very good. Maybe you could outline some of the steps of how this moves from concept to reality, starting first with the feasibility study, and then how that, how a potential alignment gets cooked into some of the planning, thoroughfare plans, for example, for counties and such, and how this becomes reality. How do you see that path?
Right. The effort has started. TxDOT had a $14 million engineering study with David Garnett's firm. They will take that through the concept design. Also, their objective is to meet with the local communities, the local governments, the local cities that are all impacted by this, the local property owners, to get feedback from them with regard to how they feel about a major thoroughfare. It's going to be a major thoroughfare. How do you feel about a major thoroughfare coming through your community? And then the next step would be do an environmental, in which they would have several alternative routes in which they're identified for the route of the road. From there, other additional community meetings in which the community gets to have input, plus and minuses on the various routes. A route will be selected, and once the route is selected, they then turn loose with the final design of the road, and then once it's designed, obviously construction. So it's going to be an expensive road. At one time, it was estimated to be about $700 million. I don't know what it is today, but that's it's pretty expensive. You've got a major bridge across the river. Obviously, you've got another bridge either across I-10, or you can take I-10 across the road, one of the two. So that's a major expense. So you got two major areas that you've got a pretty big expense item. The rest of it is pretty much, as we call, virgin territory. There's nothing but blank land out there. So that's the positive. That's the reason we're trying to get it done sooner rather than wait until all the development takes place. And then you've got a major problem of snaking a road through a bunch of subdivisions. That's not always a lot of fun. So that's kind of the process you go through. It's a multi-year process, obviously. And it's one of the reasons we started so early, because we know this is a 20, 25-year process to get a road of this nature built.
Mm-hmm. And for that reason, it's important, I think, that we saw the recent inclusion, or at least the proposed amendments to the RTP 2045, 2040 RTP of the two, the north-south study areas for 36A. that's critical, right? And maybe you can explain why that's a key part of this.
Well, obviously, a regional planning authority for the region. They do the major engineering planning and establish what we call the major thoroughfares. You establish a major thoroughfare for two reasons. One, it's fair to give property owners, developers, et cetera, notice that hey, there's a road going here so that they can plan accordingly. That's number one. Number two is if it's on the major thoroughfare plan, as developers come in and develop their property, if they're submitting a plat, they're going to be required to donate the right of way and build the road. So it's fair to give them a heads up that, you know, this is where a major road is going to go. So when they're obviously doing their planning to develop their subdivision or whatever, the commercial development, whatever they're developing, that they know that, there's a major road going here and I've got to accommodate for it. So that's one of the main reasons that we try to get out ahead of development so that we put people on notice. I don't think it's real fair to come in after the fact and say, oh, by the way, I know you got this nice subdivision in the process of planning, but here's a major thoroughfare through the middle of it. That's a little unfair. So we're trying to get out ahead of that because we've done in that quite a bit, really, with some of our major thoroughfares. I'm dealing with that right now, where the residents don't want to widen a road that is designated as a major thoroughfare. So they say, well, nobody told us it's a major thoroughfare, and that's probably true.
Right. I thought it was interesting. Yesterday, we had the discussion with the Bryan College Station Chamber of Commerce. They brought up an actual white paper that Texas Transportation Institute had proposed. I think it had been commissioned by the chamber, but a Fort Worth to Freeport corridor expressway concept. And so they're very much in line with the belief that we need to create efficient ways to move freight into that Dallas-Fort Worth area. So talk a little bit again, let's kind of go back and maybe retread, but with a little more detail, why this is just not vital, just as it originally started, a great north-south corridor for Fortman County, but is actually has statewide impact, and why it's important to build that coalition, even that has a larger regional coalition for this.
Well, you got a great asset, a great resource currently sitting there in Dallas-Fort Worth, the largest inland port in the United States, the third largest distribution center in the United States after Long Beach, LA ports and the New York, New Jersey, on the East Coast and West Coast. So this is in the middle of the country. There's a tremendous asset sitting there that currently is being used by LA Long Beach. It's not being used by any. I'll explain it this way. More than 50% of the Asian goods that are coming to the Houston market come through LA Long Beach. LA Long Beach to Dallas-Fort Worth, Dallas-Fort Worth down to Houston. 50% of that Asian market, Asian goods come in that way. I think that's un-Texan, frankly. We should not be letting the West Coast basically ship our goods to us. We should be having it shipped directly to us. So if once you have a deep water port, it provides a lot of economic opportunity for the entire state of Texas, because obviously you have a tremendous asset, as I said, sitting there in Dallas-Fort Worth with their great distribution centers that they have. It's already there. Taking advantage of it is something that to me is a no-brainer for the state of Texas to do that, because right now it's mainly a benefit to the West Coast, LA Long Beach. They're the ones getting the benefit of that distribution center, because almost all the cargo coming in, 70% of the cargo that comes in goes to Dallas-Fort Worth and shipped north and east and west. But basically that's it's railed into Dallas-Fort Worth and it goes in many different directions from there. So having a An infrastructure that takes you from the port, Freeport, to the Dallas-Fort Worth area is, I mean, it's going to open up all kind of opportunities region for the entire state of Texas, because you've got the three main rail lines that actually come together in Rosenberg and what we call the Triple Fork. You have all the rail lines that do the same thing in Dallas-Fort Worth. So once you get it to those 2 points, you can ship cargo on the rail just to any part of the country. But you got to get it there first. And it's a very convoluted way currently getting cargo from the port of Freeport to those 2 locations currently. That's the reason you need a 36A and you need a rail line. Both of them are expensive to build, but the benefit to Texas and the country as a whole, frankly, maybe somewhat to the detriment of the West Coast, to me, we're missing a great opportunity if we don't exploit this. The deepwater port for the port of Freeport and the largest inland port in Dallas-Fort Worth. We're just missing all kind of opportunities, all kind of business that can move in here, more job growth that we bring in here. Obviously, we're going to have to bring more people. We've got a lot of room. Hopefully, they'll all come and live in Fort Bend County. Some of them go someplace else, but we'll take our share. We don't want all of them. But you see the growth continuing west. Obviously, TxDOT is improving 10 as we speak. We've got to have some north-south thoroughfares, guys. We don't have any. It's one of the reasons that they ended up building, the Grand Parkway, because it does kind of take you north-south to portions of it. But there's none that go all the way from the port, say from the Gulf Coast, all the way to North Texas. There's none currently existing, and we definitely need one. This will kind of help that to a large extent. It's not a direct one, but it gets you to the points in which you effectively will have a north-south freight corridor that you can move cargo to and from the port. You got to get the cargo to the port and from the port.
Mm-hmm. Some people would look at this and they think, well, this is kind of in competition with the Port of Houston, and there might be some natural alliances of go, well, why are we trying to displace that? I think you would say and argue, and so let's see if you agree that this is not a competitive kind of relationship with the ports, but instead an opportunity to enhance both, create win-win opportunities and cooperative relationships. And there's a lot of advantages here to seeing Freeport realize its potential, and that would also enhance just all the ports in general, but the Texas Gulf Coast and Texas.
No, I think you're correct. From this standpoint, one of the things that has been looked at is that Port of Freeport can be the first port of call. You offload half the cargo and move the ship to Houston port. Now that it doesn't have, you don't have to have the depth for the port to accommodate a ship that's half full rather than one that's totally full. And you can have the reverse of it. You can load half the cargo in the port of Houston, take it to the port of Freeport to top it off with the rest of the cargo, and then ship it from there. So I think there's a real potential synergy between the two ports. They operate a little differently. Port of Freeport will become predominantly a container port. The Port of Houston is a kind of combination. They ship a tremendous amount of petrochemical and oil products, obviously export. But this gives an opportunity, I think, to benefit both ports. Having a deep water port so close is going to significantly assist and benefit the Port of Houston.
Excellent. Why don't we talk a little bit about the rail piece? There's, that's maybe on a back burner at the moment, but just talk about what is the need, if any, for that short link or some sort of rail component to interface with all of this. You might even want to discuss the freight shuttle concept, how that might play a role, but just a little bit about the rail and kind of where that stands and how you see that playing into all of this discussion, or whether we can move past that.
You gotta have me wade into the politics now, which is okay. I'm a politician. I don't mind doing that. Obviously, anytime you start talking about a rail line, you're going to generate opposition to it. And when we started out, the local officials were in favor of this overall effort. We created a rural district, Fortman and Missouri County did. We had a change in leadership, a change in, I guess, local elected officials, and the new guys came in the naysayers, so to speak, the people who are against any kind of rail of any type got their ear, and so they appointed a different board, and so the majority of the board now is more or less kind of anti-rail, so to speak, or anti-rail going through this area. Currently, the Port of Freeport has one rail line, Union Pacific, that serves it. That is came about as a kind of a consolation with regard to a merger that the Union Pacific went through, and they lost certain areas that they served, and as kind of a consequence, or I guess a part of the negotiations, they received more or less a monopoly, if you would, at the Port of Freeport. Currently, there's no direct connection between the Port of Freeport and what we call the rail hub. There's only one rail hub in the Gulf Coast of Texas. That's at Rosenberg, Texas, where all three of the Class 1 rail lines come together in what we call the Triple Fork. And once you get it to Rosenberg, you can put it on any one of the three rail lines and rail them anywhere. To get it out of the Port of Freeport to Rosenberg currently, you have to go basically almost to Galveston, Texas, and then bring it back, go west, go east, and then before you bring it back west and north to connect it all up. So it's a very inefficient way of moving rail cargo. And so we came up with the concept of what we call a short line railroad. It's about 54 miles long from the Port of Freeport to the rail hub at Rosenberg that would obviously connect to all three of the Class 1 railroads at that point. And obviously the people between those two areas weren't real happy about a potential rail line going through their community. You had the opposition, obviously, from Union Pacific. They're not real interested in losing any monopoly, on rail cargo. Right now, that is sort of sitting on a back burner. I have been in discussions in the past with the Port Authority with regard to legislation that would allow them to build a rail line to serve their port if that was going to be necessary. So, that's another avenue we can pursue, and it's one that I've actually started. I said, if we're going to run into opposition from some of the local officials, to me, this is too important a project to be killed because of a few local oppositions. In many instances, the people opposed to it, I don't know if they're misinformed or they simply don't want to be correctly informed, but we keep trying to tell them, look, you've got an alternative here. The Port of Freeport is going to develop. If there's no rail line, the cargo is going to move by a truck, and you've got one road that comes out of there, 36, is going to come right through the middle of your community. And so you're going to be faced with 5,000 trucks a day, 18 wheelers a day coming through your community. We don't think that that's an ideal situation, frankly, nor is it very efficient. We continue to try to educate the community with regard to what the impact is going to be on them if we don't have a rail line, and what a rail line through there would bring to the community as a whole from the standpoint of economic development opportunities for the region. Obviously, if you bring it to Triple Fork, there's a lot of opportunities for our distribution centers there, manufacturing centers there in Rosenberg and Richmond, and that part of Fort Bend County. So we're trying to we're trying to let people know that there's actually a net benefit when you look at all of the factors that you're dealing with of having a rail line from the Port of Freeport to the rail hub in Rosenberg.
Well, the port's going to develop. The
Correct.
traffic's going to increase.
Correct.
And all that traffic will need to move one of two ways or both.
288, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's coming up a rail line, one of the two.
Okay, well, so let's talk a little bit just how can groups like this organization or others, how can they plug in and where do we where's the public support come in, particularly when it gets to like funding a project like this through the Texas Transportation Commission, bodies such as that? How do you see that going forward?
Well, what we really need is some assistance with regard to our the senators or state representatives. And I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm going to be very factual. Factually speaking, the Port of Freeport is in Senator Joan Huffman's district. She is not a very enthusiastic supporter of these efforts. It is also in Dennis Bonin's House district. He likewise doesn't seem very enthusiastic about the project. And so we're trying to get, after redistricting occurs, I have no clue at this point in time whose district the Port of Freeport is going to land in. It's unlikely it will remain in Jones district. It'll probably be someplace else. Where it lands from a House standpoint, I don't know that either. But we're going to have your state senators and your state representatives on board, to help push the project. To that extent, we're trying to use Ted Cruz's office to the extent we can to have a little bit of influence on the local people. I've raised the issue with Lieutenant Governor Patrick. He's basically deferring to the local people. And so our biggest challenge there is getting our state senators and our state representatives on board. And I don't know if we're doing a really poor job of telling our story, or if it's just one that the opposition they're getting from the local people, or a rail line, the opposition they're going to get from Union Pacific, which does have a lot of influence with the Texas legislature as well as our federal legislators. They're a very old business that's been around for a lot longer than any of us have, and they're very good at protecting their interest. I'll put it that way, and that's what they are currently doing. So we've got some of those things we've got to get over, and so what an organization like yours could do is work in conjunction with the 36A coalition, as well as the local officials who are in favor of this project and advocating for it with your state reps, your state senators. They all have a role to play, and point out to them, to all of them, that look, this is going to benefit your community, whether you live in whether you live in Missouri County or Fort Bend County or whatever. It's going to benefit you directly and indirectly, all the way to Dallas and parts north, and everybody in between. So all the we've met with Senator Colker's and her staff. It benefits her areas that she covers, 21 counties. She's in favor of it, but she kind of defers. Okay, it's in Jones district, so she kind of let her drive the boat, so to speak. So we'll continue to work with Huffman's staff and her, but it's a little bit of a. I'm not saying she's totally rejecting us, but it's not something that's very high on her priority list. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we've certainly had Senator Huffman come and speak to 36A luncheons in the past and Zoom meetings, and she's always has been an advocate. But what we're hoping is that this really begins to get on a front burner for not only her but many other legislators, because it does have such great statewide potential, even, and economic impact. One last thing, we're hitting into hurricane season. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is just the need for a corridor to just assist in the terms of hurricane evacuation. And you've been through a few hurricanes, and you've seen some of the congestion issues.
One of the focus we have on 36A, we need to widen 36, and we need to get it to points further enough north to get people out of the area and get them through here efficiently. Right now, they only can come up 288. That gets crowded real quick. Or they come up our little 2-lane, farm to market roads. A 36A, a 36 plus a 36A would be an ideal hurricane evacuation route for most of that portion of the Gulf Coast down there. That is another reason that we need this road.
Yeah, and it can get pretty jammed up, right? I think everyone's probably seen that during those big hurricane evacuations. So there's a great need for that. Any concluding thoughts before we kick it open? Maybe Tim, will this be a time that we open it up to any general questions folks may have? I don't know what our time frame is looking like, but I think that we're kind of headed toward the home stretch. So Commissioner, maybe just some concluding thoughts you may have.
Well, we always welcome all and everybody who sees it as a worthwhile project, worthwhile effort. Get on board and talk it up, advocate it, particularly with your fellow business community and other organizations, and let them know. Generally, and if they have any questions, certainly I've given you my contact information. They can contact me. I'll be happy to sit down and talk to anybody about the project. Basically, just trying to get the word out, just the message out there. And the benefits the potential benefits that sit there right within our grasp. We just need to move forward on it. Excellent.
Well, Tim, I suppose this would be an opportunity to open up for any questions anyone else may have. Is that appropriate, and how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, that's perfect. So I'll just start off with bringing it directly into Houston West. Have in your conversations, because we talked today about the overall project and Dallas and all that. Are there any particular firms that we already know about in the Houston West area, the energy corridor, that have bought off on the concept and see the value? The evacuation route thing, that was an easy one for me to see and acknowledge that, hey, if you're on the west side, where do you go? But on the economic side, which is what I want us to focus on, creating jobs, creating job opportunities. So I'm just looking for, maybe it's something I need to talk to David Garnett's firm about, because they're the ones that are doing the study. Who have they earmarked in our particular region with Houston West Chamber of Commerce? So
I don't think we have identified any specific firm at this point. What we're trying to do is obviously get the funding for the studies and get them rolling forward. So that's been our focus. We haven't really focused on identifying specific businesses that may have an opportunity. Obviously, there's some. We just haven't focused on that.
Okay. Anybody else out there? Margaret from Metro, or I see Jerry's got something. Jerry, you want to pop in?
You're muted, Jerry. You got to open it up. There you go.
Earlier in your presentation, you talked about some key steps that needed to be taken. And one that you mentioned was the start of the environmental impact statement, has your planning gotten to the point where you have some estimated target date for when that EIS is supposed to be launched?
Yes and no. It's a funding issue with TxDOT. That's probably a $15 million effort. We've got the initial round of funding. And once they are completed that initial work, we'll go to them and ask them for the additional funding for the project. Since, they're kind of, as I mentioned earlier, they kind of slowed the project down a little bit as they reallocate their diminished resources. It kind of pushes it back a little bit. We were hoping to finish the engineering study in 2 or 3 years and then begin the environmental impact study that is going to take about 5 or 6 years to complete. We think we think we can catch up on the timeline if assuming that, because I know that the revenue is coming back to the level it had been before for TxDOT. They just had that obviously temporary dip in 2020 that has temporarily impacted them. So we think we can get it back on track in maybe 3 years. We start the environmental impact statement.
Okay.
So I'll jump in again and thinking about other projects that we know about recently, that the Texas Rail, and I don't know, I've forgotten the name, tip of my tongue, and their challenges with getting right of way for rail. How does that differ? Because I think they're pretty much in the same category of, fighting across farmlands, but apparently farmers aren't willing to give up land for right of way. Is it different with your project?
Well, no, it's not different with my project. That's the reason. Are you talking about the road or are you talking about the
Speed rail?
The rail?
Yeah, I'm comparing it to the speed rail and all the, I'm going to say, controversy around, whether it's going to get done, and no, people saying, no, I'm not going to give up my land. And, now I think
high speed is a little bit different than cargo. Recognize the benefit to having a freight rail. Obviously, if you would have an opportunity to have some type of commercial development within your community with a freight rail line coming through there. High speed rail is going from one point to another point. Guys in between are just kind of wave it as it runs by, and they're a little bit different animal. There's a lot more. There's certainly opposition to any rail line, but there's a lot more opposition to a high-speed rail line than you do otherwise, because we just don't have the same potential opportunity for some type of economic benefit to your community with a high-speed rail line that you do with a freight rail line.
Yeah, a lot of the opposition too is centered on the viability of their economic model and whether at the end the state will have to come in and backstop it with additional funds. And that's just it's different. I mean, freight kind of pays for itself real easily. There's really no questions for that. So you have support for these, and as an economic viability. These are just more natural kinds of infrastructure as opposed to the high-speed rail. I'm not speaking for or against high-speed rail, but that's just the reality. That's one of the arguments that's crept up about that.
Well, last time I was involved in a conversation on rail, and that was still in the corporate world. And one of the major things that we found in the particular subject matter at that point in time, and the biggest resistance we were finding in the community, is that neither the state nor the railroad were willing to build either underpasses or overpass for the new rail line. And that's where most of the resistance from the neighborhoods and the communities came from. They didn't want the rail coming through the neighborhoods and towns unless the streets were not going to be blocked in any significant way. So is that what's going on in terms of the resistance now? Is the communities don't want the rail lines blocking roads?
Well, that's obviously part of it, but they simply don't want the rail line at all because they see it as a nuisance. Their deal is, what is the benefit to me? It's a 54-mile stretch. It's not going to stop between Freeport and the rail hub in Rosenberg at all. So what's the benefit to us? And what we tried to explain to them is that the benefit is the lack of 5,000 trucks a day going down your farm to market roads, which you're going to have if you're not moving the cargo by rail. You're going to move it by truck. It's going to move somehow, and you only got two options: rail or truck. Yeah. There's a third, but I think that Jim alluded to it. That's a potential, container movement system that Texas A&M has kind of come up with. But when you look at the potential and the economics, they're going to have to bring the cost down significantly, in my opinion, to make it a truly viable system. And it's an automated system that's an elevated system that basically utilizes the current right of way, et cetera. And it just right now I think it's too expensive. But they may get to a point where they get the cost to a point where it's becomes economic viable. And it's the idea is to move containers from the port to and from the port to the major distribution center, Dallas Fort Worth. So about 450 mile distance that they would move the cargo. That's an alternative.
Yeah, and the main value of that, I suppose, in terms of the concept, is that it's using existing transportation corridors. You're not having to create an entirely different corridor. It moves on an elevated track, so it can all coexist with existing highway infrastructure, theoretically. So.
Well, that's interesting that you talked about where it coexists with an existing structure, and I have written down on my in my notes about the 45 failure. I didn't think of it as a 45 failure until recently, and I think I saw somebody else write it that way. I was I'm going to say involved, just a guy on the street involved in the 45 projects when they started doing the events at George R. Brown and talking about what they were planning to do. It's like, once people started opposing it, I was like, well, okay, I was there listening, I thought most of it was a good idea. I'm not an engineer. I don't know all the ins and outs, but they were there waiting for your input. And some of the people that are arguing against it right now weren't there in the beginning conversation. So, I guess that's what we're trying to do right now with advocating, making sure we don't have some of that 45 failure of the project people get down the road. And I don't know there's no real question in that, just some crazy thoughts that came out of my head about it.
Well, with the value of having discussions like we're having now. Very critical.
And we want to avoid making other people's mistakes.
Yeah. So, anybody else out there? I was wondering if Rob is actively listening, and he might have anything from his Sealy point of view. He's got anybody thinking about things that where they can take advantage of it. We typically have somebody from the West Chase district, somebody from the Energy Corridor district, Water district. There's a lot of my folks that are normal people here, and they're not here today. Now, the good thing is with Zoom is that we will be able to share this, and I'm going to make sure that we as a group bring it back, because they're actually on the committee that helps me to figure out what we're going to talk about. But I mean, I think all those other entities will add value. I mean, I don't know. The Kinder Institute comes up with all kinds of ideas about using flood money to do road projects and vice versa. Any things like that have already come up or that we can spur some thought around?
I'll throw my comment in. This is Rob.
Yeah.
I had gotten on here because of the road aspect of 36 going through Sealy and a big chunk of Austin County, but now you've proposed another point to think about, and that's rail, what it's going to do to the rail that goes through Sealy and north. So that's an interesting concept. Now, if they get that to Rosenberg with their, what did you call it, triple
fork, we call it. the
Yeah, well, we got two. We don't have three, so
Right. It,
coming through here. But
Yeah, I think it will
plan
benefit
about it. It's right in town. There's a lot of main streets that cross those tracks, north and south and east and west. So I think it's something we, as a community and as a peripheral county, need to be aware of and start planning for. Our planning commission was trying to do transportation within the city, and I had seen over a year ago information on 36A, and I thought, if it's got Highway 36 on it, you ought to at least be aware of it in Austin County. And I do understand your project of getting freight out of Freeport, and sorry to hear that UP wants to be the only player in the game. Don't know why they wouldn't participate in adding that link, because it goes up to one of their main terminals. But you've got the Canadians coming in, going to buy KCS. May they be interested in stirring the pot?
Well, certainly all the chemical and other companies down there in Freeport would love to have an alternative to one rail line. They're kind of a captive.
Well, I think that happens all along the Gulf Coast, where they get one rail line and have to go even in the Houston area along the ship channel and down LaPorte. They're tied into one rail line no matter where you are. And I've seen the problems through the years with freight due to squabbles within the freight lines. So I'm sure that UP would like to keep that little nugget they've got down in Freeport with Dow Chemical and all the peripheral chemicals coming out of there.
You're right.
When the National Railroad Company of Canada purchased the old Illinois Central Railroad that went from Chicago to New Orleans about 9 years ago. So they're now a major player in the domestic rail transportation system.
Right. And I think KCS gets them on the left side of the Mississippi. You know, they've got an east-west going through Dallas area. And I guess they've got the old Texas-Mexico railroad line that comes over from Laredo, and Carpison comes up through Rosenberg. If they buy the KCS. Thanks for your information, Judge. Do you have a map that shows your proposed road through Fort Bend and Waller counties?
Do I?
Yeah, or the 36A project. Do they have a map? What's your idea of where your road wants to go?
We deliberately are avoiding that. I mean,
Okay.
so, well, I mean, we really, that's the purpose of the study process will be to identify those corridors and alignments. Commissioner, will you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, we don't put a line on the map because when you go through the environmental impact statement, if you have put a line on the map, that's the last place they're going to pick or let you pick, so to speak. So what we try to do is let the process determine where the route is going to go. And that's the process we started into as you check with the community, what you're feeling about a road coming through here. And then when you go through the environmental impact statement, they will come up with several alternatives for a route, and they will end up through a process of discussion with the community, et cetera, identify the preferred route. So we don't have a preferred route yet. We know the concept. The concept is going, through Fort Bend, obviously on the west side of Fort Bend, more or less through the middle of Waller County. And actually there is, I guess, a route that is kind of identified in the Waller County Major Thoroughfare Plan that was recently adopted back in 19, which goes essentially from Woods Road to 290, more or less around Prairie View. So that's kind of more or less set. One of the things they're trying to do is avoid the Katy Prairie Conservancy areas. So they're kind of limited as to where they can put that road.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the process that the state will undergoes is designed to interface with various stakeholder groups, with elected officials, with community organizations, to all bring together some consensus on potential alignments. And and so it would be premature to say, well, this is where it's going to go right now. That process hadn't taken place yet, and it's a necessary one in order to, again, build that consensus for a project.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions there? Margaret, anything for Metro? I don't see anybody else in particular that would be strategic. I find it interesting that my grandmother worked for Southern Pacific Railroad her whole life, and my granddad worked at the port. I never had a chance to talk to my granddad, but my grandmother, I never understood what she did. I knew that she was involved in what I consider the first spam mail transfer. She had this whole book of little ditties that they passed up along the railroad from the secretary pool. But I never thought I'd be talking about railroad. It'd be interesting to be able to talk to her about this now. So I'm just excited that we've been able to bring this up and point out the drastic need. My family, one part of my family started off there in Rosenberg, and I've heard rumor that we were the description in the dictionary of dirt poor. My aunts and uncles would go out and wait for the cars to come along the roadway and get stuck in the mud, and then afterwards would dig through the mud to find the extra coins that they might have lost, as they got pushed out. So interesting pull together of everything. So I don't want to hold the session longer than we need to. If anybody doesn't have any questions, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. So I just want to make sure that we thank Mr. Myers for taking the time out of the day to let us know what's going on. It's been very enlightening to me. I'm glad that I was able to get Jim to jump on and really accentuate add value to what we needed to know about it. So with that, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. I do want to remind everybody that we do have a legislative panel coming up on the 24th. It is our first in-person event at Trulux on June 24th. Now, I did get word yesterday from one of my legislative aides that the special session could stomp that, so they're suggesting that we might have to bring it back a week. They didn't give me anything either way. You know, they gave me a yes that they were coming. So hopefully that'll work out. And
I don't
you know,
see them having a special session until they have the census numbers.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't planning on them interrupting our session, you know, our forum, but the aide took time out of her day to specially call me and say, hey, just a heads up, this is what the rumor is on the street. So yeah, and I would love for you to you know, join us and listen to what's going on. You know, I know that this is getting to be, you know, Jim up in Montgomery County and Andy down in Fort Bend County. You're not really in our area, but I mean, we're all in this together. You know, we have water that flows back and forth. We have roads that flow back and forth. So being able to know what everybody's involved in, you know, I'd love for them to see your faces so that when I go up and can walk the halls again, I can say, you know, remember the face on the Zoom meeting and what they said. So I look forward to seeing everybody on our next event on June 24th. Please sign up now. If you're coming to the event tonight, look forward to seeing everybody to celebrate. So once again, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Commissioner Myers and Jim Fredericks. Outstanding presentation from you both. Thank you guys so much for being able to do this for our membership today. As I put in the chat earlier, all of this information is now on our YouTube channel. The link is there if you want to share it with your colleagues or anyone else that might be interested in learning about this. So that link is there. Go ahead, share away. And as Tim said, we're having our chamber celebration tonight. I hope to see all of you guys all razzle-dazzled up for our celebration. And with that, gotta go, y'all.